guys, is James Woollam, Managing Director of HAYES PARSONS Insurance Brokers. James is an independent chartered insurance broker based in Bristol. And we really wanted to bring somebody else to the session today to bring some independent thought leadership and to look at where he sees the need for digital transformation within the insurance sector. Hi, James, welcome.
Hi, Tamara, thank you. Are you able to hear me okay? Because I know there were sound issues earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I get the first slide, please? So I've purposely today, having been asked to talk a little bit around from an insurance perspective, my views. I suppose I've purposely done this fairly untechnically, so I'm thinking from both the customer and the management perspective, and I'm not very technical when it comes to the digital side myself, so that's probably another excuse to avoid going into too much detail. But I specifically tried to talk around what I see as the expectations and the challenges for both insurance companies and brokers, and also what the clients are expecting. I've done this from a broker perspective, as I am an insurance broker, but equally I think this is as relevant for managing general agents and insurers as well. The first slide here I've put on is actually just shows what can go wrong. So one of the legacy computer systems that we and about 900 insurance brokers use actually went down 3 years ago. The fact that it was 3 years ago and I still remember it very well tells you how challenging it was at the time. And it wasn't at the time a full cloud solution. We were in a tier 1 data center. There were challenges around backups. There were challenges around disaster recovery. And actually some brokers were down for up to 5 weeks. And that really goes to show, I think, what can happen when things go wrong. And in fact, if you look at the photo, you can see I look very, very tired. And that explains that. Next slide, please. So I've had a think around what I see as the challenges that we have as insurance brokers. And really, you can take from this much of today being what the solutions will be. You'll notice I've purposely avoided COVID-19 and Brexit, which I think have probably been said an awful lot and are fairly obvious other challenges. But from the perspective of a broker, when they're considering what to do around digital transformation, what are the challenges they have? Well, we have legacy technology. There are still plenty of insurers using green screen technology. And I think up to now, in order to move that forward, you were either relying on software houses that still had a lot of legacy, or you had enormous cost. And I think that's something now that's coming down. We're seeing quite poor service from insurers who are struggling with some of that technology. And I think that means that companies that want to give customer service need to take up some of the mantle themselves. There is an enormous pool of untapped data. Brokers and insurers hold vast amounts of information about their clients that mostly at the moment sits in computers and isn't used. And actually, the data that sits there is an absolute goldmine for companies that work out how to tap it in the right way. We have changing buyers who are becoming digitally savvy, and in fact their expectations are changing significantly. We have a very reactive service at the moment. I read recently that over 50% of all insurance buyers only speak to their insurer or broker once a year, which is at renewal. There's a big question mark over whether products are fit for purpose. We're moving into a modern world where you don't necessarily have ownership of the property. You have the gig economy, and actually policies at the moment are really struggling to deal with that. And actually, we have a regulator, the FCA, and for insurers, the PRA, who are showing that they're going to be very, very proactive in dealing with brokers and insurers and MGAs moving forward. And they don't have a lot of time for excuses around poor technology and poor data retention, or indeed blaming service providers. They have very high expectations, and since COVID, the FCA has written to all brokers, MDs twice, telling them about expectations, which goes to show how proactive they're going to be. Next slide, please. So I think something that I hear all too often, both in my business and in insurance generally, is really an apathy to change, or we ban it, but you hear a lot around we've always done it like that. And I think that's a really challenging. The rest of the slides I've done are going to show why I don't think that's the case, that clients do just want to continue as things are. But there's a real challenge within the insurance industry at the moment to make people realise what's happening, and that actually the client doesn't just want things to carry on as they are. Next slide. Giving an example of that, so Hayes Parsons, as Tamara says, an independent insurance broker, and we're just beginning to investigate both digital transformation and, as part of that, selling online, which all forms, I guess, a part of digital. We have a product that we sell normally, traditionally by phone, and by filling out a form in paper. And over the last 6 months, we've done a lot of work around launching a digital proposition, which will be, or is, a fully serviced online proposition. The client can do absolutely everything without any conversation with us as a broker or the insurer at all. And we spent many weeks and months trying to work out whether the clients would actually want that. They are the scheme in specifically is quite unsophisticated in terms of the buying habits, and they seem to like being on the phone and filling out paper forms. And we were concerned that this would be a lot of investment for us that could well not get us a lot of return. What's really interesting and has shocked us is, admittedly with COVID as well in the background, but we launched the product online full cycle in June, and by the end of October, getting on for 2/3 of all of our clients, some of which would have been with us for 10 years plus, used to doing it a certain way, are actually buying online. Another interesting stat that's not on here is a third of those buyers are actually buying out of hours, so they're not buying 9 to 5 anymore. Now, a small broker in Bristol has been able to put together this product because costs are coming down, and it's really interesting. I think that just shows what the clients want. We've been pretty surprised by that. Interestingly, in the background, that sits on Microsoft Azure, and we use Power BI to look at the data analytics. So it's been really interesting so far. Next slide. So why should insurance companies and brokers particularly think around changing? Well, I've thought around 6 or 7 reasons why I think fundamentally we all need to think about change. I'll start with a very positive one, is that actually there are new opportunities. So I mentioned earlier around the gig economy, that doubled in the last 3 years. 57% of people wish they could own less stuff. So we're moving to a position where actually you don't want to buy an annualized insurance policy once a year because actually you're only going to hold that item for a week or two. The amount of products that insurers can offer in that space is scary, almost none. I suppose that looking at it the other way, if you don't do it, someone else will. So 77% believe that in the future all insurers will have the same access to data. Therefore, actually, what's going to matter is how you cut that data and use that data to give yourself an advantage. Disruption is coming. We've seen already a number of insurtech firms come in. I think the first generation of insurtech firms are probably now coming back out, but the next phase that's beginning to come in look like they're here for the long term. Again, that digital disruption is coming, whether you like it or not. Google, Apple, and others, once they join the frame, there will be some real challenges. So I think everybody needs to kind of get with the program as quickly as possible. Next slide. In terms of what clients are looking for, again, it's a really interesting report that came out from one of the legacy insurance software houses called Applied, and some of the kind of stats from there were really interesting. So 3/4 of Generation Z, so what's that, under kind of 23, expect to be using an app when selecting an insurance provider. Well, the number of insurance brokers alone who will have an app right now will be a handful. Certainly we don't. Does that mean we're shutting out the buyers of tomorrow? 85% of millennials and Generation Z consider 24/7 customer service important. And again, going back to my specific example, we're seeing 1/3 of sales go through out of hours. Next slide. So what is it actually that customers want? So it was mentioned earlier around a kind of hybrid or multi-channel approach. So I think what we're not saying is that digital is going to take away from actually a more traditional talking on the phone and meeting with your insurance broker or an insurer. Actually, clients, including young Generation Zers, want a hybrid approach where they can maybe research you online, they can look at information online, they can then ask you questions, but actually they'll probably then, using 24/7 service, go and buy it out of hours. So interestingly, going back to our personal example on our online sales, we are receiving significant volumes of emails and calls asking questions before they buy, and we're servicing those, but they're then choosing to go and self-serve themselves out of hours. In terms of better service, I think we need to be really realistic on the service that we're giving to our clients at the moment. It's quite realistic to say that if a business customer was to call us today asking for a change in their policy, it could take us between 3 days and a week, even longer during COVID, to talk to an insurer, get that change made and send it back to the client. If we compare that to going online to buy a flight, or indeed going online and buying clothes, you could have the clothes, in fact you could have gone out for the night wearing the clothes that you've bought in the time from when you ordered it, in the time that you go and make a change in your insurance policy, and wait for some of the feedback to come back from the insurer or broker, which I think gives a really good example of the kind of improvements that we need to make. In terms of, as well, I've said around personalisation. So again, a really interesting statistic, 89% of insurers expect within 5 years personalised insurance will be expected as a standard practice. Clearly, what we've seen is really quite a dichotomy from that at the moment, which is that on the whole, with transactions and online, we've been thinking around volume and making things quite transactional. Whereas actually, what the people, that buyers of tomorrow want, is quite a personalised service. There's no way we can do that with the staff and the people we have right now unless we use technology to help us do that. And so being able to create personalisation in insurance is something we're all going to need to do fairly quickly. Next slide. So I think in terms of where we are today, there's a high risk of doing nothing. I think the FCA are taking more and more of a look at insurance. I think that there are security issues that we need to think about, and we've got a new generation of buyers that are going to demand multi-channel ways of dealing with insurers and brokers. But there's also a high opportunity for getting it right, whether that's in terms of happy customers who you're going to retain for longer, and whether you actually can use it for new business and use the data that sits behind to give you a competitive advantage. And that's it, Mark.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James, for sharing your insights. There's certainly a lot of information there that resounded with myself. Funnily enough, my car insurance ran out today, and last night at 10 o'clock I realised that I hadn't read my renewal, and as such went and looked for another one at, I think it was 10:30 last night, and with a view to getting my insurance for up and running again today. So people do want to use any channel. Sometimes depending on the age and also the personality, you want to use different types of channels. Also different times, automation. You need to be able to account for all of the different people's preferences out there. And I think, like you said, it's challenging, but the technology is there to help you achieve that.
And I think it's becoming more affordable. And I think the great thing is, if you can get the technology to be doing the self-serve with you, actually, then it could have freed up people to call and have a chat with you about it. And maybe give you a prompt. So again, that's a true kind of multi-channel approach from an insurance company's point of view, which I think at the moment isn't happening.
And that's certainly what we're seeing a lot of. We're seeing a lot of automation being used for the people that don't need to make any changes. So you can transact with a significant amount of your customers via automation, and then you free up the agents to be able to escalate to so that you're putting through people that actually need the assistance. And that could be on an app, a phone, a chat, a video call, social media. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Appreciate it. So